Napa know-how.
A Napa guy knows more isn't always better, unless we're talking about full-size vans. These beasts do more than get you from A to B. They have so much space a man can live in it. With shag carpeting, waterbed, and a sweet lava lamp, these mobile abodes have all the comforts of home. With quality parts and plenty of Napa know-how, you can keep the original tiny house running longer, stronger. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to On Trial, starring Mark Radulich, also starring Sean Comer. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because you're on trial.
Please be seated, ladies and gentlemen. The judge has entered the courtroom. This is On Trial. The Honorable Judge Fudge presiding. But I am your host, the mandated reporter, your pal Wheezy, and frankly I'm mortified Mr. Mark Radulich. And of course joining me tonight, this time in the chair for the defense of our latest installment here on Wolverine Week on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, Mr. Sean Comer, as we bring you X-Men Origins Wolverine. Ladies and gentlemen, the inimitable Sean Comer. How do you do, sir? Let's try that again. The inimitable Sean Comer. How do you do, sir?
Jennifer Walters for the defense, Your Honor.
Hello, Shield.
Oh, it worked that time. Good.
Yeah. Right.
I'm good. I'm good, man. It's been a busy day, and I'm glad to just have something halfway normal, like playing lawyer while talking about bad Marvel movies.
Yeah, this X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's an interesting topic to discuss. Can we just say right at the top of this that whether you loved it or you hated it or you just kind of found it meh, that there was much ado made of the changes in Deadpool, which I think colored a lot of people's opinions. Like, you know, and I bring that up because we had a similar conversation about the Wolverine, which I think genuinely was well received, but a lot of people were turned off by the use of the Silver Samurai at the end. And, you know, Jason Teasley was the best example of this, and he's actually the one that said it on the show at the time. Like, well, I really hated the Wolverine. And I was like, what could you possibly hate it about it? He was like, well, I didn't like the Silver Samurai at the end. Okay, you're talking about one part of a movie. Now I did the same thing with Civil War, and I have since backtracked and apologized for it. But I think our discussion tonight, I think, will elevate the general discussion of X-Men Origins Wolverine, because I don't think either one of us, pro or con, are going to rely on the Deadpool issue in our overall presentation. Would you agree or disagree?
I'll address the Deadpool issue because it's something that, with time, I've come to realize has been blown massively out of proportion. It has become so exaggerated in the petulant whining about it that stuttering Sean here, it rivals the damn rave scene in The Matrix Reloaded on the scale of sheer, for the sake of all peanut butter covered fucks, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Just one of those things where you hear it complained about so often and so loudly and just so vociferously that when you finally watch it and when you finally experience it again, you realize that, goddamn, it's inconsequential. You're complaining about something that's utterly meaningless in the grand scheme, both in terms of everything the movie gets wrong and the things that nobody really gives it credit for getting right.
I said, and I don't want to color my own argument or help you with yours, but I think just in terms of discussing some notes about the movie, I said on our Wolverine Week announcement and subsequent discussion of the character, which is currently in the archives here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, because we brought you Wolverine Week all week long here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network with the release of Logan, which was reviewed on Damn You Hollywood this past Tuesday, which you can hear in the archives on the Radulich Broadcasting Network. That, smooth as butter, baby, that if you don't know what a Deadpool is, and you're just following the beats of the movie and what the main villain, Stryker, was attempting to do, what becomes of the Ryan Reynolds character called Deadpool makes sense. They were trying to build the super mutants to make the ultimate weapon. That's what it was. It was, they made a monster. They were trying to make a monster. The plot of the movie, whether you think it makes sense or not in general, was they were collecting mutants to take their powers to find the right combination to build a super weapon, and at the end they did it. They succeeded, and then they sent the super weapon after, the one that got away, which is Wolverine. Okay, that all makes sense. That all actually adds up. But because, and I think it was Josh Calandros who said, well, then they should have called it Mimic, not Deadpool. Okay, except two problems with that. Number one, you have the issue of nobody at Fox Studios knew what a fucking Mimic was. And there was no way they were going to allow anything but Deadpool in the movie. And number two, unless you're just going to call it Weapon 11 and not call it Deadpool at all and just say you stole Ryan Reynolds' powers and that's the end of it, that's the last you see of Deadpool, it would be difficult to work in yet another of the 106 characters they had in this movie. So, it's either you make a commitment to calling it Deadpool because that's, because it's the venom of that particular movie. It's the one the studio wanted. It's the bane of that particular movie. It's the one the studio wanted shoehorned in. Or don't do it at all, and just call it Weapon 11 and be done with it. So I wanted to get that right out there, right out in the open, because if you're expecting to have this long sort of debate over the Deadpool issue, there's other problems. There's other good elements of this movie that I think are worth both of us talking about and worth our time than just bellyaching on Deadpool. So I wanted to get that out in the open there. As I said, this is Wolverine Week. It's our glorious conclusion, though there will be one more Wolverine show sort of as a bonus tomorrow. Screaming Boy has their discussion of Wolverine and character depths in the Marvel Universe. If you should check out, it'll be up tomorrow if you're listening to this live. We did our Old Man Logan show on Monday, our review of Logan, the movie, on Tuesday. Yesterday was the review of Entombed's Wolverine Blues from 1993, and then we're doing Origins tonight. So let's get to it. I'll let Sean do his notes in just a second. X-Men Origins Wolverine came out in 2009. It was the fourth of the X-Men movies as part of the Fox Marvel franchise, following X-Men 3: The Last Stand. Had a budget of $150 million and just was barely profitable at $373.1 million. Hugh Jackman returns to the role of Wolverine. He is joined by Liev Schreiber, who plays Sabretooth, Ryan Reynolds as the aforementioned Deadpool, or not Deadpool as it may be, Weapon 11, Danny Huston as William Stryker, and before he ever went into the trees to play with the Ents, he plays some other character in this movie, Dominic Monaghan, getting fifth billing for some odd reason. It also stars, what's her face here? Where is she? Will.i.am as John Rafe, Lynn Collins as Kayla Silverfox, and Kevin Durand as the Blob. And of course, and I can't forget this. Sorry, Taylor Kitsch as the Quezon Gambit. Yes, Remy LeBeau. Another one the studio fucking shoehorned in there. So I think you can probably speak to this better than I can, but I think Hugh Jackman wanted him in the movie too, the character. So, all right, Sean, load me up with notes, baby. X-Men Origins Wolverine, hit it.
From the time that X-Men came out as a huge, unsurprising box office smash back in 2000, really a Wolverine solo movie was never a matter of if. It was just a matter of, well, quite frankly, when. I mean, they had their leading man because Hugh Jackman was never in doubt as being the quintessential man to bring the character to life. And it was just a matter of wrapping up the original trilogy, from X-Men to X2 to X-Men The Last Stand. And from there, it was on to deciding to expand the universe into giving some individual characters the spotlight. And really, I mean, Wolverine is one of those aspects of the team that has really become the icon, the synonymous X-Man, despite the fact that he didn't make his first appearance in Marvel Comics until 11 years after the X-Men debuted, and didn't really receive his first full-fledged star treatment until Chris Claremont and Frank Miller took him on with a 4-issue arc in 1982. But at the same time, he's the most recognizable, beloved character of the squad, and so, okay, we'll trot him out first. And really, as I'll demonstrate when I get around to actually making my case, this is a movie that had a lot of the right people behind it. Writer David Benioff spent 3 years chasing a chance to work on this project before he was finally given the go-ahead to write the script in October 2004. For those of you who aren't that familiar with big names behind the camera, he's the showrunner of Game of Thrones. If that gives you some idea of just what he would go on to do. Are you hearing the beeping in the background, Mark, or is that just me?
That might have been my computer, so I've muted it. Go on.
Okay,
hopefully
yeah.
that's the only beeping you were hearing.
Well, yeah, that was it. But, I mean, try to knock that off because I've got a Bluetooth headset in that, and I was worried that meant that it was running out of power. Anyway, where was I? Yes. To bring us around to some of the other moving pieces that came together, at the time, Ryan Reynolds and David S. Goyer were coming off a long stretch of trying to develop Deadpool for New Line, but it fell apart circa 2003 when they decided, of all things, that they would much rather work on Blade Trinity and its attempted Hannibal King spinoff. Initially, the way that David Benioff wrote the Wade Wilson, no, folks, no, I unless I'm using it to criticize the actual aspect of it, I'm not going to call him Deadpool when referring to him as a character. Wrote Wade Wilson into it in a manner that apparently, for some damn reason, enticed Hugh Jackman, despite its massive departure from his origins, and it was also the same reason that everybody was pretty much on board with the way they attempted to introduce Gambit. Jackman liked the character, having done his homework with the comics leading up to making the previous 3 X-Men movies, In fact, he was able to point out that, in his opinion, the dynamic between Wolverine and Gambit should probably echo that of Wolverine and Pyro. David Ayer, he of Suicide Squad infamy, also contributed to the script, which was eventually finished in October 2006, with Hugh Jackman having to kind of put a bit of a 1-year cushion between that and when he would start filming, because he was due to shoot Australia with Baz Luhrmann and Nicole Kidman in 2007. After that came the 2007-2008 Writers Guild strike, and finally, in the midst of that, Gavin Hood was announced as the director in July 2007, despite the fact that Bryan Singer and X-Men The Last Stand director Brett Ratner were both interested in coming on to helm it, as well as at one point was Underworld mastermind Len Wiseman. I think that's Underworld, pretty sure. And also, guess what, everybody? At one point, we almost got a Wolverine movie directed by Zack Snyder. Yay! However, despite being offered the job, he ultimately turned it down so that he could go and direct Watchmen. Your mileage probably varies as to how you feel about that. Anyway, filming was actually just a wee teensy bit of a hot mess, mostly because Gavin Hood, who is a fairly accomplished director in his own right, and at this point was coming off directing the critically acclaimed rendition, clashed repeatedly with Fox executives during the film. Hood initially wanted to go in the direction of playing up Wolverine as a Army veteran beleaguered by post-traumatic stress disorder, which actually, if you really think about it, makes a whole lot of sense. And the studio was nearly ready to replace him entirely, but then, of all people, another director famous for his battles with studio executives on a comic book movie showed up to make the piece on set. Mr. Richard fucking Donner, along with his wife and X-Men executive producer Lauren Schuler Donner. And it took a while. It took a lot of debate and a lot of tense moments, but things eventually did manage to somehow get better. So yeah, ultimately, it was a little bit of a mess, and it sounds slightly, as I'll make pretty clear in just a short bit, like this suffered from a bit of the same problems that Suicide Squad did, which was you had far too many cooks in the kitchen who were screwing with what was otherwise a good idea, including executives who, for some reason, felt the need to insult their audience's intelligence. Another interesting little bit of trivia is that Gavin Hood has claimed that X-Men Origins Wolverine has got multiple secret endings that actually differ from print to print. You've got one that concludes with Wolverine having a few in a Japanese bar, and the bartender asks if he happens to be drinking to forget. He corrects him that he's drinking to try to remember. And in another, Wade Wilson is laying decapitated on the rubble of the tower after its destruction, and is just simply trying to reach out and touch his recently removed head. Otherwise, if you want to run down, one other bit of trivia and a little bit of a recommendation for anybody out there who has a yen to go and play a quite good console title that might have gotten forgotten under the radar. This spawned a video game by Ravensoft by Raven Software and published by Blizzard Activision, with a script written by Mark Guggenheim, and featuring the reprised voice performances of Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth, Will.i.am as Wraith, and, of course, Jackman himself as Wolverine. It takes the story from the film, expands upon it, adds more villains from the comics, including the Sentinel and the Wendigo, and the Mystique even pops up. And all in all, it was the kind of brutal, rough, definitely M for mature / R-rated outing that, let's just face it, that this should have been. And it was quite well received, and it would probably be worth it to go out and track it down. If I recall correctly, I'm going to just backtrack and just check this to make sure. I believe it came out on the PS3 and PS4. Nope. No, I was partially right. The PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Windows, Wii, PlayStation 2, Nintendo DS, and PlayStation Portable. A little bit of nice local trivia. 20th Century Fox held an online contest to determine podcasting Alexis, you go away now, who would host the April 27th U.S. premiere. Who won? Oh, my city. The Harkins Theaters at Tempe Marketplace in Tempe, Arizona, right here in my neck of the woods, ultimately won that gala prize. Its Mexican release was delayed until late May after an H1N1 outbreak. And if you can believe this, 9 days before the release of the film, early projections of pre-sales indicated that it was outselling, of all movies, Iron Man, quote, 3-1 at the same point in the sales cycle. It obviously wasn't competing. I don't think it was competing directly. I'm trying to remember what year Iron Man came out. I should. One of my favorite movies of all time. No, actually it did. So they were running neck and neck, and incredibly, this thing was beating it in the sales, which I guess shouldn't surprise me as much, because for sheer recognizability, with all due respect to Mr. Tony Effin Stark, Wolverine wins that every single damn time. And the very last note that I'm going to point out before we get into the plot synopsis is that the big reason for the subtitle, for those of you who may not be familiar with it, is because this was set to be a series of spin-offs. In fact, right around the same time that this was hitting theaters was when Fox was really trying to get rubber to the road to make X-Men Origins Magneto, which would have brought back Ian McKellen to reprise his role from the original trilogy. Of course, we all know how that went. On a budget of $150 million, X-Men Origins Wolverine made $373.1 million, but it was utterly and absolutely savaged by audiences and critics alike, and hence the entire original incarnation of the X-Men was, for the time being, deemed dead in the water, and instead they would go forward with handing the reins over to Matthew Vaughn to remake the entire franchise, starting with X-Men First Class and eventually leading to what we have today, which is the series of X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past, the recent X-Men Apocalypse. I don't know if they've issued a subtitle yet for the fourth movie, but along the way, of course, we've obviously also gotten The Wolverine, James Mangold's much improved sequel, and for those of you who have not been in some ways sequestered, living under a rock, locked in some horrendous, hellish gulag someplace. Logan is currently making everything at the box office. It's biatch. So
that is until Beauty and the Beast comes out.
But yeah, so that's it. So before I get to the reasons why, well, correction, before Mark gets into his prosecution and I then get to my reasons why this really gets a little bit worse rap than it deserves, Marky Mark, give us that plot synopsis.
Everything in the movie go boom. All right, here goes the prosecution. All right. In the year 1845, a young boy discovers that he is a mutant when he pops his claws and proceeds to go and kill. The man he did not realize was his father. The fact that he was a spitting image of soon-to-be Liev Schreiber never occurs to him. But in any case, the man he thought was his father is shot dead, I tell you. And then he in turn kills the man responsible for it, who turns out is his actual father, and then he howls at the moon. That's important. There's going to be a lot of howling in this movie. We then go through a series of wars from the Civil to the Vietnam, where Logan and his brother Victor Creed proceed to fight. They are then Victor goes and kills one of his officers in the army during a situation where it looked like he was about to rape a poor girl there in Vietnam. They are then executed, quote, by firing squad. Of course, they both have healing factors, so guess what they are not? They are not dead. They are found in a prison by William Stryker, who then brings them into Team X, along with Agent Zero, Wade Wilson, who will go on to be Deadpool at some point in his life, John Rafe, Fred Dukes, who will go on to be the Blob, and Chris Bradley, who will go on to the Towers of Isengard. Anyway, they go on a mission to retrieve an ore, which will turn out to be adamantium. I might be pronouncing that wrong. Adamantium. Victor Creed goes to kill one of the villagers. Logan attempts to stop him, saying, hey, this is not good for God or country. This is not a thing to do. They have a falling out because Victor says, hey, don't fuck this gig up for us. I would rather be here than in prison. At which point Logan says, take this job and shove it. He leaves. 6 years later, he's working as a lumberjack, and he don't care, in Canada. He has a girlfriend named Kayla Silverfox, because why not? Stryker finds him. Sabretooth, Victor finds him. Sabretooth kills, quote-unquote, Silverfox. Wolverine howls at the moon again. In his relentless, I tell you, pursuit for vengeance, revenge, he goes after Victor. Victor done kicked his ass. He finds Stryker again. Stryker says, you're never going to beat him like that. Here, let me fuse adamantium to your bones, make you the living weapon, and then you'll be able to kill him for sure. And he says, okay, let's do it. We have the iconic scene of him getting the adamantium and bonded to his bones. He pops up out of the pool with all of his junk in your trunk. just wet. Flop, never mind. He jumps up, screams and yells. Now, at this point, it's important to tell you they were going to wipe his memory and imprison him because all they wanted to do was see if this shit works, which it does with him. But he hears them in the pool after going through an incredibly painful procedure, goes nuts and escapes. He finds an elder couple out in probably one of the nicest, somewhat funnier sequences in the movie. Finds a farm with a farmer and a farmer's wife. He spends the night with them. They are kind to him. You see a bit of humanity here. And, of course, they're dead by the next day. They're killed again. As Agent Zero finally tracks him down and tries to kill him dead. He fights back, crashes the helicopter, kills Agent Zero, takes off to try to find Stryker and Victor and find out where the island of wayward mutants lies. Along the way, he catches up with John Wraith, who is training Fred Dukes, who has become the Blob at this point, with terrible. I mean, well, I won't get into it just yet, but yeah, the Blob looks great on screen. Everybody, he doesn't. Anyway, this is who he beats for information about where they can go next to find the island. That takes them to Nolans, where they find Remy Gambit LeBeau, the island, the mutant who got off the island. That's his role. They get into a bit of an exchange. This somehow gets Victor to show up again. They have yet another fight. And then from there, they go on to finally find the island. This is where it gets a little tricky. While there, the big revelation is, hey, remember that chick you were with for 6 years? Yeah, it was all a plot. Yeah, it's all just they were keeping tabs on you. This woman, this whore, basically, was with you just to make sure the Stryker never lost you. All right? And that they faked her death to convince him that getting the metal bonded to his bones would be a good idea. Cause him significant enough loss, he will make a terrible decision. That's the idea with this. So Stryker refuses to release her and her sister. So Wolverine, finding the hero within, says, I'm going to release the prisoners and I'm going to save my not-a-girlfriend, who eventually tells him, but it was real for me anyway, even though it was a job, I guess. I'm shrugging, by the way. This leads to the big revelation that they did what they set out to do, which was make the ultimate super weapon, a amalgamation, a hodgepodge, if you will, of mutant powers named Weapon 11. Hot diggity. Otherwise known as Deadpool. And he can't beat him alone, so, Victor and Logan team up together. They finally dispatch with him. Stryker goes after Logan, ends up shooting him in the fucking head after he kills Kayla. Wolverine is saved by Gambit, but he has no memory now of who he is. And Victor kind of just takes off into the ether. And that's pretty much how the movie ends. All the kids get off the island. They're saved by Professor X in the mystery helicopter. Wolverine says he'll get off the island somehow, some way. Lucky for him, they show you a map of the place and there's an actual bridge to land, so that's good. Easy enough. But he doesn't remember who he is or how he got there. He just knows that his name is Logan, and he's the Wolverine because that's what it says on his dog tags. Convenient. And there's a mid-credit scene where they're talking to Stryker about killing General Munson earlier on in the movie. And that's it. That's the movie, everybody. All right. If it pleases the court, I mean, is there anything you want to add to that, or are you good with that synopsis?
Nope. I got it. I think you nailed pretty much everything, and I would agree that it's damn near going to be fucking impossible for anybody who tries to ever make the Blob look good on screen. He's a big fucking fat dude. There's
two ways they could have done it. They could have actually hired a fat guy. They could have hired a fat actor. I'm just saying. Come on, man. Hashtag give fatties a chance. Or they could have hired Eddie Murphy in the Nutty Professor outfit. I think that would have worked as well.
That's true. Well, I mean, it's that whole sequence in the boxing ring, saved by the fact that Hugh Jackman demonstrates that in another life he could have indeed been one hell of a professional wrestler because he takes an entertaining shit kicking. I mean, he
really does.
he takes it like he takes it like a champ. Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig would have been proud to
He
have
does
seen
a
that.
flip-flop and fly that Ric Flair would have been jealous of. But that's neither here nor there. But please, the court. I will.
Oh yes, please the court. Get on your
I would like to
knees
please
and
the
please
court.
the court.
I would like to.
Oh, you'll please the court and like it for a bag of coffee.
I would like a trip to
Hey,
Europe.
Ben Cologne,
I
how you
would like
doing?
to introduce myself. All right. I would like to begin the prosecution of this movie, X-Men Origins Wolverine, by talking about a different character with a similar problem, and point out the overall issue with movies such as this, these prequel-type movies. I would like to talk to you about Darth Vader for a moment. You'll indulge me. The prequel Star Wars trilogy is the story of how Anakin Skywalker rose to become a great general in the Clone Wars and a pilot in his own right, and a hell of a Jedi, and then fall from grace to become the demon wizard that is Darth Vader. And this is not going to be yet another classic Radulich diatribe against George Lucas. That's not where I'm going with this. I am, however, going to talk about the weakness of the trilogy as a whole in terms of how you tell an origin story effectively and why Darth Vader's origin story doesn't work. Because it's the same problem you have with Wolverine. I think at its most basic level, there are certain characters who all you needed to know is that they are corrupted. That's it. Just knowing they are corrupted and they need to be redeemed because somewhere within that corruption is a redemption story. There's good within that person buried so deep by so much trauma that the story isn't how they got the trauma, the story is the redemption. But if you're insisting on explaining how the sausage gets made, you have to understand that you're starting with the end first. And what I mean by that is everyone going in knows that Anakin's going to become Darth Vader. Everyone knows going in that Logan's going to become the amnesiac Wolverine with fucked memories who has to be saved by Professor X in the X-Men trilogy that we've already seen, by the way. Their stories are told. So you have to then come up with this interesting backstory that, despite its conclusion, is still interesting. Part of the reason why the prequel trilogy sort of falls on its face is that Anakin doesn't really have an arc. He starts off kind of shitty, he continues to be shitty, and he makes shitty decisions at the end, and so when he quote-unquote falls from grace, it's more of a stumble than it is a fall. You're told he's good, but he does nothing but make bad decisions for 3 movies. So when he finally just gives himself over to the dark side, you're like, I saw that coming a mile away, and not just because I saw Star Wars. I saw it coming a mile away because since the very first movie, he's a dick. He had this within him the whole time. So it's a flawed character in the way that it's presented in 3 movies. With Wolverine, you have the same problem with this X-Men Origins Wolverine story. You don't really have an arc here. He's kind of okay at the beginning of the movie. And he's full of righteous indignation and wanting revenge through most of the movie for reasons that are not, beyond the pale. They've killed his girlfriend. He's been beat to shit. The only 2 people that were nice to him even after that are also killed. So, you get why. And then it's not like there's a lot of time spent with him wallowing in pity and anger and becoming an even shittier person and having to be pulled out of it to say, hey, these people ruined your life. Get it together, man. Like, he's just motivated to keep like, he just sort of stays with his head just above water, which is where he started in the movie. He recognized that he was a killing machine from the get-go. He continued to be a killing machine, and the only change that ever happens with him is they shoot him in the head and he forgets who he is. That's the arc, ladies and gentlemen. That's not an arc. That's a flat line with a small heartbeat at the end. Okay? It's a... The arc that is shown in the X-Men trilogy, X-Men, X2, X-Men The Last Stand, that's the arc. That's him starting out as a shitty amnesiac, finding the hero within, sacrificing, and doing what's right because it's the right thing to do. That's his hero's arc. And that's all well and good, despite what people may think of the third movie. At least there's an arc to be had there. With this one, what makes this movie, and this is its greatest sin, as I said on Facebook, if you follow me, the greatest sin of X-Men Origins Wolverine is that it's so pedestrian. It's just a arcless, paint-by-numbers origin story. Here's the thing that happened. Here's the thing that followed. This is what he did in the end. Here's the bridge to where we find him in the movies that matter. Whoop-de-fucking-do. It's Spider-Man without an arc. Okay? Oddly enough, the last movie we talked about had more of a character arc in it than this one, and that was Catwoman. Okay? At least she started somewhere and ended somewhere else without the help of an adamantium fucking bullet in the noodle. So, that's this movie's biggest problem is, and I don't want to get into rewriting the movie, but if you're going to tell Wolverine's story, and I'm not even talking about, like, you must be sort of, biblically married to the source material, but if you're going to, I don't even really know his origin, to be honest with you. I wasn't, as I've said throughout this whole week, I'm not a huge Wolverine fan. But, tell a story where, he is noble, where he is good. Bring him down, and then tell the story of him coming back up, to at least where you find him at the beginning of X-Men is there's still good there. It's just it's hardened good over time. Not what they gave you here, which is just he's the same, then he's shot in the head, basically. I also found it really weird that their introduction to this character is that, without showing anything else, like the whole beginning sequence is really rushed because what they want to establish is that you have a tale of two brothers, Cain and Abel. One is good and one is bad. And, okay, for those of you playing the Radulich at home drinking game, get ready, grab your shot glass. Film is a visual medium. Show me, don't tell me. And you have two instances where they don't really show Sabretooth, Victor Creed, with his appetite becoming more violent, becoming greater, to the point where he's becoming a monster. Now, that might be because it's PG-13. That might be because they were so singularly focused on Hugh Jackman and Wolverine that they neglected every character in the movie, just about. I would have much preferred to have seen an extended sequence of Sabretooth doing more and more heinous things, and at first seeing Logan, a little queer about it, a little questioning, and then becoming uncomfortable, and finally building up to the point where he says, I've had enough. You're a monster. And let that become a huge blowout. Instead, it's like they're in a war. They get killed. They're captured. They're on a mission, and suddenly he's like, "Hey, even after all those people that we've killed, what you're doing here seems wrong." Okay. So again, it's just a uneven, poorly told story. I mean, honest. Well, I'll let Sean defend it. I'm not going to say nice things about the movie. Let's talk a little bit about craft. These are some of the worst performances I've seen, even if you're grading on a curve for a superhero movie, for fuck's sake. I mean, Liev Schreiber is fine with the material he's given. Obviously, Hugh Jackman knows the Wolverine role, and he's fine. There are certain characters that seem to know how to act. But between the poorly written dialogue in this movie and some of the performances, Will.i.am, I'm looking in your direction, boy, is this movie a little... And again, I'm comparing it to Catwoman now, where at least Benjamin Bratt's a competent actor. They give Danny Huston some of the most god-awful, clunky dialogue this side of the Fox Power Rangers after-school shows. Holy shit. It's just awful. Like, I was laughing out loud at some of the dialogue, and not like in a campy, fun way like I was with Catwoman. I mean, like I was cringing at times. Will.i.am's performance couldn't be flatter if it were made of paper. Poor Fred Dukes is given nothing to work with. It was literally like, you're fat, so kind of talk like a fat guy. To the point where not only is his makeup and costume awful looking as the Blob, it's just ridiculous. And it's cartoon ridiculous, and it takes you out of the movie. But his delivery of dialogue is such where I just want the scene to be over. You have the shoehorned in Gambit stuff, which, by the way, if you're going to take the movie to New Orleans, as I like to call it, then do something with the setting. You have this rich, wonderful city. I mean, my God, the stupid movie with John Cena, where he plays the cop, Out of Time, Time Dance, Time Cop, whatever the fuck the name of the movie was. But that stupid cop movie with John Cena did more with the city of New Orleans than this movie does. So you have this his own character in Gambit. You do nothing with him, and you do nothing with the city. It's basically that could have been in Detroit for all we knew, other than the sign that said Bourbon Street, but it could have been Bourbon Street, New Jersey. Or they walk into a bar. That's it. Boss walks into a bar. Bartender says, "Why the long face?" That was the summation of that entire sequence. They go there, and there's some fun stuff with Gambit's powers, but that's about it. And then there's an alley fight, and then we're out of New Orleans again. It was a waste. It was like well, we got to go to New Orleans because Gambit's Cajun. See, so okay. And then the rest of the movie, like I said, he's just there. Your characters sort of showing up and leaving the movie as the plot needs them to, which is poor writing. That's just poor craft. And then you'd have this plot point where either make a commitment to either killing Silver Fox or don't. But the bait and switch was, again, just poor writing. Like, I get the need to kill her at the beginning, but then you undermine everything that was supposed to be by saying at the end, oh, it was just a plot to keep track of you. And, we'll kill her when we need to. Why not drug his cereal and get him sooner? Why did they need to wait 6 years for this? Because I was under the impression that the relationship had been about 6 years long. He got to Canada and met her shortly thereafter, and they built this life together. It was dumb. If all they needed from him was to make sure the adamantium worked. I don't know. Maybe that's how long it took him to get the process ready to do. But if that's the case, then that should have been plainly stated in the film. the end sequence is basically a video game boss fight, and it's pretty much shot that way. Whether it's Mimic, whether it's Deadpool, whether it's a ham sandwich, that's all it is. It's just a video game meaningless boss fight. I'm okay with the concept of, you know, he gets to the island and he turns out his whole life is a lie and he doesn't even know why he's there anymore. But then he decides he's going to save the kids. But again, you didn't need the subplot of the sisters there. It was just enough to say you had the kids. Oh, and by the way, you didn't need Cyclops either. It's just ridiculous. You could have very easily just had it be a group of kids with maybe one or two identifiable mutants in there, and that was sufficient. This, you know, as Sean mentioned earlier, you have the Suicide Squad issue of you're just now jamming characters in there to jam characters in there. As I've said before, comic books have the luxury of you allowing them to have a number of characters that, you know, that just kind of look good on the page. Film needs to be tighter. And if you're going to have an ensemble character, you know, a bunch of ensemble characters in your movie, then you need to know how to balance them. And I think, in conclusion, that's probably the worst part about it, is just how out of balance this movie really is. So, it's an uninteresting origin story that really tells you nothing about the character other than shit happened, which who cares? It's out of balance. It's poorly acted. The dialogue is poorly written. And the special effects and CGI are laughable at best. You're a witness, sir.
Thank you, my tallest. Ladies and gentlemen of the turkey, I want you to think for a moment about a car. Now, you know what? Scratch that. Don't just think about a car. I want you to think about a BMW Roadster. I want you to think about this fine masterpiece, this apex of automotive engineering, before it ever rolls off the line, before you see it on a showroom floor, before you sit in that plush, swank interior and take it for a cruise down the highway. How does it start out? Well, you have the highest quality premium materials that money can buy. High-grade steel, aluminum, electronics, fabric, glass, all of it. All of it laid out right there before you, just waiting to be machined into their appropriate components, assembled. You have the most brilliant, forward-thinking, efficiency and quality-minded engineers the world has ever seen. Well, the world automotive industry, anyway. People who could have done anything, but they chose to make a symphony, Michelangelo's David, the Mona Lisa, out of the automobile. People who know how to make cars. It's what they do best. So you have the materials, you have the right people, you have the right minds handling those materials, and above all that, you have executives who know how to sell it, who know what will sell, who know what people will want to buy, and who have a clear vision of quality and how to set the BMW brand apart from every other automaker in the world. Now that you have that, I want to change just one variable. Keep the same materials, keep the same automotive engineers, the same hardworking people, men and women on the assembly line, putting it all together, making sure that everything fits. In the words of Serial Pharrell, just so. And instead, I want you to take those executives and I want you to swap them out with about 24 clones of Homer Simpson. Do you still get a BMW Roadster? Or do you get a cartoonish monstrosity with a giant fucking dome, oversized cup holders, and a horn that plays La Cucaracha? Do you get the paragon of luxury automotive achievement, or do you get the Homer? That is what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. Members of the Jerky, what you have here is you have the wrong people at the top who wouldn't let the people beneath them simply do what they do best. They felt the need to interfere, to get their hands on everything, and the result was not the landmark cinematic solo debut of one of the most beloved, best-selling figures in comic history. No, we got this utter popcorn fart that had to be retconned out of existence by the series' original scion of the big screen years later. No, this was so bad that along with everything else that had gone wrong with the series, Bryan Singer had to come back, shake his head, and just say, "God damn it, you kids, I leave you alone for 5 minutes." And he had to go and take the reins back and say, "No, let Daddy show you how it's done." You know, I actually feel that I owe you all an apology. You know, if the prosecution had by some chance run out of pens and notebooks to take the kind of thorough notes that he did last week with Catwoman, I got a half dozen Mead 5 stars on me and about 2 or 3 packets of Bics, pilots, and whatnot in a big Samsonite backpack that I lug around with me every day. If notes was an issue, I would have helped. You could have asked. It's all in the spirit of cooperation here. Because the fact is, my counterpart mentioned the idea of a botched origin story and how to tell one the right way and how to tell one the wrong way. Well, the simple fact is, this movie was actually inspired by an excellent origin story. One of the reasons why I personally, when I saw the title, was so excited, so thrilled, was the fact that I felt that glimmer of hope that maybe Fox was going to adapt Origin, a 6-issue limited series published by Marvel from November 2001 to March 2002, written by the dream team of Bill Jamas, Joe Quesada, and Paul Jenkins, and illustrated masterfully by penciler Andy Kubert and inker Richard Eisner. It's an outstanding origin story that actually the movie does delve into just ever so briefly, in the fact that it goes all the way back to 19th century Canada, when a young boy named James Howlett was raised in the rich plantation home of John Howlett Jr., who brings along an orphan girl named Rose to be his companion. And together, the two of them play with a young boy named Dog Logan, the son of a cruel, violent, alcoholic groundskeeper named Thomas Logan. Now, throughout this, we're led to believe that just because he's named Logan, well, and he has a bad attitude, well, that's it. Dog is the boy who will grow up to one day be Wolverine. Perfectly obvious. No. No, in fact, there's a lot of tension between the boys' fathers because James' mother, Elizabeth, went mad after their first son died under mysterious circumstances years before. Rose later finds Elizabeth with 3 parallel scars along her ribs. It's a hint that maybe the late John Howlett III might have had his own claws. Over the next several years, Dog starts to take after his father. He attempts to assault Rose, kills James' dog. He becomes so violent and so dangerous that John Howlett Jr. has no choice but to expel him and his father from the manor entirely. Thomas eventually returns to try to rob it and to convince Elizabeth to run off with it, but John Howlett discovers them. Thomas kills John with a shotgun in front of all three of the children and Elizabeth. As he witnesses this, three claws, three spires of bone, all of a sudden spring from James' hands. He kills Thomas Logan. He injures Dog, goes into shock, and it's only because of Rose that they manage to escape after Elizabeth says to James, "Not you too." He ultimately gets away. Rose follows after him, and they go on the run for what would be the rest of their lives together to Canada, where Logan eventually finds employment in a logging camp, and where eventually, then he was still known as James Howlett Jr. at the time. But eventually, of course, Dog Logan tracks them down. The man who would eventually change his name to Victor Creed, and becomes Sabretooth. Now, there's a lot more to it that I'm not going to go into, because really it is an absolutely, utterly superb story that I highly recommend you all read. It is an origin story truly done right. It's one half of the core inspiration for this movie. The other half actually being Barry Windsor Smith's Weapon X story, which is where we get the adamantium procedure that gives Logan's skeleton the old chrome dip. It's where we learn about much of the history that eventually gets blocked out of his memory in the comics. It's the program that produces Wolverine, Leech, Deadpool, and, of course, Sabretooth. But you see, the problem is, you have these great stories. You have these raw materials. And along with those, if that's the steal of our Roadster, you can't really blame that for why this movie goes wrong. Because that is the right kind of skeleton. That's the right kind of frame for this story. So we turn to the engineers. We turn to the people who mastermind the whole thing, who draw it out, who sketch it, who map every precise arc to the closest degree, who give it every sexy curve. You have David Benioff, who is an avowed comic fan, who did his history, who read Origins, who read Weapon X, who knew his stuff and had an outstanding idea. You have Gavin Hood, who, while not one of the greatest directors, he certainly knows James Mangold, he certainly knows Bryan Singer, he's not even Matthew Vaughn. But prior to that, he had proven that he had a great sense for drama. Rendition is excellent, and I highly recommend you check it out, if only because it's such a timely war movie that came out right in the thick of the George W. Bush administration. And that was really the story, really kind of an essence that Hood would later say he wanted to bring to this movie. It was the idea that he wanted to toy with the idea that anybody who was capable of doing good was also capable of doing evil. And that's really the soul of both Wolverine and Sabretooth, and their paths diverge in a crowded wood. And they both take their respective roads to their respective destinies. They're both capable of good, as we see initially. We also see they're both capable of evil. in a way, they're both the best in the world at what they do, and what they do, no, it isn't very nice. So we had the right engineers. We had David Benioff, we had Gavin Hood, we had an excellent, superb writer who would go on to make one of the most critically acclaimed, gripping, dramatic and action-filled television series of all time, Game of Thrones. A man who would later bring George R.R. Martin's incredible literary universe to life on HBO. And he was the one who wrote the script. And you have Gavin Hood. You have a competent director. Okay, so you got that in place. So it's hard to entirely blame them. They had the right frame. They had the right materials to work with. The prosecution mentioned the craft of the movie. Well, okay, we could kind of call that the paint. We could call that the upholstery of this. It's this movie's color. It's its personality. And quite frankly, all the action scenes are a bit forgettable. Okay, they're actually pretty well done. It's a good-looking movie. It's just a good-looking movie that unfortunately lacked something, where something went wrong. If you took the Homer and gave it a nice pearlescent royal blue paint job, yeah, it would still be an ugly-ass abomination of a car that if it could speak would probably just mutter, "Kill me." But it would be an ugly dingleberry of a car with a pretty paint job. So that is not where the fault lies. So we turn to the assembly line, the people who put everything together. We go and we look at this cast and, is it perfect? No, because, every team has that one weakest link, that one booger eater that you just sit around on your lunch break trying to figure out whose cousin he is. Because there's no way he passed the interview on his own. But then you've got a couple great foremen leading. There's a couple elder statesmen who really know what they're doing. You got Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber. Two fine actors who respect the hell out of each other, come from very similar backgrounds, physically gifted, really athletic and nimble in bringing the action to life. They're convincing. Because let's face it, Liev Schreiber is the saber-tooth we deserved in the first movie. He isn't the one we got, though. We got a professional wrestler they probably hired because, for all we know, Dan Spivey was busy that year. Dan Spivey was busy, and they worried that I don't know, Nathan Jones's lactation was going to be problematic in wardrobe. Just spitballing. So you have Wolverine and you have your Sabretooth. Unfortunately, they did not get. Brian Cox wanted to come back and wanted to play William Stryker again. He wanted them to just, age him down a little bit. But Danny Huston did what he could with what he was given. So hard to fault him entirely for that. You have Ryan Reynolds as Wade fucking Wilson. You have a man with a passion for a certain character, and you hand him that character, and then you tell him, no, you don't get to be that thing. It's like taking Patrick Stewart, and you make him think that he's going to get up on stage and he's going to regale an audience of lifelong theater devotees with his readings of Shakespeare's most stirring monologues. And instead, when the time comes to rehearse, and when it's too late for him to back out, when he's basically obligated, no, you hand him a giant banana suit, and you hand him a baseball bat, and you say, Sir Patrick, thank you for your time. We deeply appreciate your work and your commitment to the stage and trotting the boards. But memorization of this will be simple, but it will be epic. Trust us. We know what we're doing. We know what we want you to give this crowd. Go forth and say to this audience, as the immortal bard would, it's peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time. Make the words your own. That is what you gave Ryan Reynolds, the man who would eventually prove that Deadpool is one of the most lucrative, viable, and purely entertaining big screen comic adaptations anybody could have come up with. Nope. We're going to make him Deadpool in name only. He's just going to be Weapon 11. You know, you have this Lynn Collins as Kayla Silverfox, and you know, what do you say about her except for the fact that, well, she went to the stock market, she did a business. She played a half-assed version of everything that Rose was to a grown-up James Howlett in the comic, except she kind of wasn't. You might as well just call her not Rose. By the way, Michelle Monaghan, good on you for passing this up due to scheduling conflicts. Dodged a bullet right there. Kevin Durant as Fred Dukes. Folks, nothing is ever going to make the Blob good to put on screen. I said nothing, never, ever, ever. Will I Am as John Wraith. Well, we love Bart. My buddy Jeremy and I, whenever we're just at a loss to explain something, we just want to shrug our shoulders. That's the tone of resignation we come up with that Simpsons quote. It's just Marge, it just saying, well, we love Bart. And, you know, then you even bring along fucking Gambit, Remy fucking LeBeau, arguably the one X-Men that has been clamored for the most to be brought to the screen, to be brought to this franchise, and he's reduced to an absolutely, utterly useless cameo. You know, and this is where I have to backtrack and I have to woefully correct the prosecution. You know, my whole point about the studio executives getting involved was not that they tried to cram too many characters into the movie. That has not always been the problem with X-Men. I mean, these are ensemble superhero movies. By and large, a few select characters aside, no, they've managed to actually treat a whole mess of Messerschmitts pretty damn appropriately.
Objection. Cyclops.
Overruled. Cyclops sucks anyway.
I want Judge Fudge's ruling on that one. Go ahead.
Anyway. So no, you actually could have taken at least some of these characters and done a whole hell of a lot fucking more with them. But that wasn't the problem, just that you had too many characters. You had too many characters. It wasn't that that the studio wanted too many characters in this movie, because really there was room to accommodate at least most of these. I mean, if you were to go and total up the number of main characters in X-Men and X2, you would find that it's about equal in this movie between, you know, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and the X-Men in those two, and, you know, not Weapon X and everybody else in this movie. It wasn't the quantity, it was the quality. It was the fact that that was what fell apart, because the studio... What in God's name are you doing over there, Mark?
I'm sorry. I should have muted my phone. I was mixing something as you were talking. I'll stop. Go ahead.
Okay. That wasn't the problem. So no, you can't blame the assembly line, you can't blame the engineers, you can't blame the raw materials. You cannot fault them and hold all of these people guilty for crimes that came from over their head. We have to be very careful who we prosecute here, ladies and gentlemen, at His Eminence. Because the problem here is you have a studio that's dug in, that has a history of digging into movies that it has no business getting so directly involved in, and going against everything that would ultimately work for Marvel Studios. And that is, you let the people who know stick to what they know, and you sit back and cash the checks. It's the simplest fucking concept in the entire world. You want proof of that? Okay, fine. You want to bring up the whole Deadpool thing? And by the way, we will be going into this much more, because I have more to say about this. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact that eventually, when they had the conviction to go ahead and say to the likes of Ryan Reynolds and Tim Miller, okay, give us a Deadpool movie. Do it your way. Here's your budget. We're going to just let you do your thing. Do your stuff. Well, lo and behold, look what happened. We actually got a quote-unquote X-Men movie that utterly shattered expectations despite having an R rating. Look what happened when they let James Mangold and Hugh Jackman pretty much have entirely their own reigns of Logan and make an emotional, visceral, very personal farewell to this character, and to do it their way. Not to just make an X-Men movie, but to truly make a Wolverine movie. Think about that. Think of how much freedom they gave to these people who understood and loved and invested in these characters personally, and imagine what would have happened if they would have allowed David Benioff to simply weave together these two superb chapters in Wolverine's early years. Either A, you just devote the whole movie to origins and make the kind of movie that Logan has proven can work even with a comic character, or you somehow find a way to weave together Logan and Weapon X. Because actually, frankly, go ahead, fucking fight me on this. The scene of Logan actually getting his adamantium treatment, I thought it was excellently done. It was visually just right. It was indeed like something ripped right out of a comic. It could have very well been ripped right out of the Weapon X story that I mentioned. That like it would have done Barry Windsor Smith proud. Everything was right there. But again, you had a studio that insulted its audience's intelligence. Oh no, they won't get a story of post-traumatic stress disorder. Fuck you and Spare the Lube wouldn't understand. That's one of the most fascinating parts of Wolverine. The part that Chris Claremont and Frank Miller understood, and that really gave him his breakout arc. It could have gone a million different right ways. I mean, you go ahead and you just almost directly adapt Origin. Or, hey, who knows? Okay, suppose you want a more action-packed early Wolverine movie. Okay, Chumpstain, I'll play along with you. Then just do Weapon X. Just do Weapon X and just stop changing shit. Stop trying to make Wade Wilson an amalgamation of all these powers in this made-the-fuck-up character. And instead, how's about we just let him be Deadpool? You're going to call him Deadpool. And really, fans, let it the fuck go, okay? Stop getting mad at him because they weren't trying to make him Deadpool. Yeah, they called him Deadpool. Yeah, they briefly made Wade Wilson a smartass who could wield katanas like a sushi chef from hell. But did they ever really try to make him Deadpool per se and get it wrong? Was that ever really their intention that they wanted to do it? No. It really wasn't. It's like if I make you meatloaf and that's all I ever intend to make you, and despite the fact that I might call it steak tartare, if I present it before you, you say that's not steak tartare, that's meatloaf. Well, okay, yeah, you might have a point that I misled you, but you can only hold against me so much because, well, really, tartare. All I was trying to do was make a shitty-ass meatloaf, and in that regard, yeah, I absolutely succeeded. This movie has done wrong. But ladies, gentlefolk, and others, can you necessarily blame everybody who made it for what went wrong? No, oh Canada, no, I submit that you cannot. They were given a job. They did it to the best of their ability, despite the fact they knew that it was wrong. And even then, there are still aspects of this movie that you cannot fault because they were elements of superb workmanship that were placed into a bad plan. The floor is yours.
My final word on this, and as we know with the structure of this show, prosecution defends, prosecution final word, bit of a discussion, then we close. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defense is trying to argue that the murderer came from a bad home. It's not his fault. You see, Daddy was a drunk. Mommy did pills. He was neglected. He was molested, uncared for. He grew up in the street, raised by gangs. It's not his fault he killed that bus full of nuns and orphans. You must forgive him for his sins. 'Twas not his fault that he turned out to be a terrible human being. That is the summation of the prosecution's defense, as I just heard it. He went through this long, detailed explanation of what started out as great raw material that at the end of the day still turned in terrible performances, save Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber. Great, tremendous, wonderful elements and raw materials that still gave you shit action scenes that look terrible. There's a couple of really fun action sequences, admittedly, that turned out okay. And yes, the jewel of the Nile, the diamond in the rough, the ruby in the crown is Hugh Jackman popping out of the jacuzzi with fresh metal claws, ripped from the pages of the comic book. And one scene does not a movie make. One scene is a YouTube video. And if his argument is X-Men Origins Wolverine is a great YouTube video, well then, okay, not guilty. I stepped away from this whole scene. But I thought we were judging a movie. This thing is nearly 2.5 hours long. That scene's about 5 minutes. And I'm glad it looks wonderful. No questions asked about it. But you still have the rest of this nonsense to contend with. Number one. Number two, it's great, again, that they had all of this raw material in the comic books to work with. But how many times does it need to be said that film is film, comics are comics, and everybody needs to protect their own job and sees value in the job that they do. Filmmakers don't want to be people who just animate comics. Comic book writers don't want to be people who just copy the movies onto a comic book page. The creation of a comic book is different and wonderful than is creating film, which is different and wonderful. One should not be a cover song of the other. Old Man Logan serves as thematic inspiration for the movie Logan. And yes, there are maybe some loose parallels, but boy, does that stretch the word loose. And that's okay. That's wonderful. Go back and listen to the Damn You Hollywood review of Logan. That was the least of my problems with that movie. Not that I had many, but regardless, it's great that Origins exists. It's great that Weapon X exists. And yes, they should have inspired this movie, but ultimately it is the film creator's job to create something that is wholly and different and wonderful from the comic. And it has happened. X2, if I remember correctly, is an adaptation loosely inspired by a previous comic book. I'll look it up in a second. X-Men 3, for all of its...
Because hang on, because if I may interject, because I remember we talked about that on the podcast. I believe you said it was... it was one of your... Well, because it's your favorite comic title of all time, God Loves, Man Kills.
Goddamn right. My father's, too. We'll just say it to each other and smile with no other context. Okay, I'm at the wiki for the writing of X2. Brian Singer researched various storylines, one of them being Legacy Virus of the X-Men comic book series. There you go. You have X-Men Legacy, and then, as I said, X-Men 3 is an amalgamation of two different stories, which is God Loves, Man Kills, and, I'm sorry, hang on. The film's premise was influenced by Marvel Comics storylines Return to Weapon X and God Loves, Man Kills. Okay, so that is X-Men 2. X-Men 3 is something else.
X-Men, it was, I don't remember, because obviously it was supposed to have elements of the Dark Phoenix saga.
Yes, I know that was one of them.
Yeah, it was very loosely where they were trying to go with that, but it's like the other one. It was basically like trying to hit the broadside of a barn with a bazooka and somehow shooting your cock off instead.
I'll leave that as it may. The point that I was getting to is there you have two varying examples of movies that were loosely inspired, one more so than the other, by four different X-Men storylines. Let's take the most obvious one, Days of Future Past. That was directly influenced by one X-Men storyline. That was a whole 2 comic book, okay? And they still did their own thing with it. This was still part 2 of the Mystique trilogy. This was still the ongoing bromance, the life and times of bareback mutants, Charles Xavier and Magneto. There comes a point where you have to say, look, let the filmmakers do what they do best. Filmmakers make film. They are responsible for making this movie. They are responsible for taking those raw materials and turning it into something, and they're the ones that wrote this story. Look, I bash executives almost every show that I do. We talk about notes all the time on Damn You Hollywood. And we focus on the situations where the notes are bad, whereas fans were like, what the fuck? But I'm telling you right now, in defense of studio executives, if I don't know anything about the comic books, but I do know that Venom is a hot item, I'm going to want Venom in the movie. Venom in the movie. I'm going to want Bane in the movie. I'm going to want Gambit in the movie. It's not my job to write a good movie around these marketable characters that sell toys that I want. It's your fucking job. Your job as filmmaker to write and direct and create a movie around the money I'm giving you. The studios give these people money to make film, folks. Or they go out there and they attract investors for the money to make these films. They have a right to say, hey, by the way, post this movie, we have to not only sell tickets, but we need to sell toys and posters and slap bracelets and computer stickers and, mud flaps and everything else we can shove the character's face onto. Do me a favor.
Slap bracelets, really?
That's the first thing I thought of. I don't know why my brain went there.
That was the very ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution. Let the record show that the prosecution has just said that the very first piece of movie merchandise that his mind went to when he thought of X-Men was for some reason something that Bailey doles out to Raw and NXT crowds.
First thing I thought of. I said toys, okay? I did say toys. Point being that it's a capitalist system, baby, and you got to make movies that sell merchandise. And so when they say shove Gambit, shove Venom, shove Bane, in these movies, it's not an excuse to say, well, the studio gave us. No, fuck you. Movies go through rewrite after rewrite after rewrite unless you work at Warner Brothers and are currently part of the DC slate of films, in which case somebody writes the movie on a cocktail napkin and then they shoot. So none of these things hold water with me. The movie, you must judge these movies for what they are, not for what they could have been, not for their potential, not for the notes and the history around them. They are a living, breathing thing. They are responsible for their own causation of joy or pain in the viewer. And that is the virtue by which they must be judged. And this, on its face, X-Men Origins Wolverine, fails on too many levels to be considered a even decent movie. On a good day, it's pedestrian. But if we're really being critical, it's poor. And the only saving graces are Hugh Jackman and Liev Schreiber's performances and one good scene. one truly stellar scene of him popping out of the jacuzzi. Stop throwing notes at me, you. Sean's doing the equivalent right now of taking paper and writing notes on them and throwing them at me as I'm talking. The prosecution, with that said, the prosecution rests. Okay, I'll take a deep breath now.
Now, wait a second. I wish to point out that one of those spitwads that I chucked at you had the 3 words for the movie to convince Hugh Jackman to stick with this franchise. Adamantium time machine.
Perfect. If it had been adamantium hot tub time machine, it would have been even better. All right.
Please do make my check out to Sean. I'm Rich Bitch Comer.
All right. Now that we have left the courtroom, all right. I in no way was, by the way, saying that by itself having too many characters in this thing was the problem. What I was saying was they had too many characters they didn't do enough or anything with. Let's look at Civil War. Civil War is probably the best example, probably not to be outdone by next year's Avengers Infinity War with a cast of about 9,000 people. But Civil War is the one we got, so that's the one we'll talk about. Civil War is probably its greatest achievement was the fact that it had an ensemble cast of 57 people, and it handled them all well. I don't think anyone got shafted, or short-shrifted. They introduced new characters. They brought back old characters, and everybody had an opportunity to do something and was used well. The only one in Civil War that really got boned, I thought, was Zemo. Yes, well, that's a whole other discussion, but yes, he's the weakest of the bunch. He's the Tiny Tim of that cast. But other than that, who cares? Everybody came there to see the Avengers fight. So, but another example of. And granted, it was 3 movies in about 12 hours, but let's just take one of them. Let's take the one right in the middle. You've got the 2 towers. We spent a fair enough time talking about the 2 towers on Long Road to Ruin, and I don't think at any given time we said, hey, the problem with this movie is, they don't handle the characters well. Nope. That was not a problem. That had an ensemble cast, a large ensemble cast, where you had a number of different settings and things going on simultaneously, and it was all handled well. I don't feel like anyone got short-shrifted at all. So I think, the idea of, if you want to have Cyclops and Gambit and whoever the Diamond Girl was, I don't remember her name, and I don't remember her actual character's name.
Oh, yeah, not Emma Frost.
Yeah, not Emma Frost. If you want to have all of these people in the movie, fine, but then give them something to do. I guess with Cyclops, they had him shoot lasers out of his eyes a couple of times, and I guess that suffices now. But you've got to give. Characters should be more than just the powers and special effects they're given in a movie. Not, it's sort of the equivalent of, we got to get them in the movie. We'll have them do a drive-by. Everyone. It's like a series of cameo appearances. Which, okay, I'm not sure what you want me to say about a series of cameos. So I just wanted to make that point. Anything else you want to talk about with this, or are we done beat this horse to death?
Just a couple quick minor things. And when I say minor, I will keep them quick. Is number one, it's possible to make Gambit interesting. He actually has a kind of neat little redemptive backstory, especially if you throw in his on-again, off-again romance with Rogue. So the only problem is I don't know that I trust Fox to do that right and to just let people who know this character and know how entertaining he could be just make a movie the right way. As for Will.i.am, I get why he was cast at the time, because this came out when the Black Eyed Peas were still one of the hottest acts on the planet. And so all of a sudden you have their front man, well, pretty much playing a co-starring role in this movie, which lends it a little bit of extra juice. But sometimes you get a musician, you let them try to act, and sometimes you get Common or Dee Snider, or even to a slightly lesser extent someone like Ice Cube or Ice-T. And then, well, sometimes you just get the yucks from the Black Eyed Peas.
I like the way Gina Carano was handled. But just to your point, I like the way Gina Carano was handled in Deadpool. Mm-hmm. Gina Carano really can't act, so they kind of have her on screen. Or another good one, Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey can't act for shit, but she's an imposing figure, and she's only in the movies because she used to break people's arms on a regular basis. And so that's kind of what they have her doing. She gets a line here or there that she says awkwardly, and then they just have her doing action stuff.
I would disagree slightly. I think Gina has kind of a warm and kind of magnetic enough personality, even if it is a little low on charisma at times, to probably be better. But you only get better the more you try to branch out and the more you try to improve. You have people who just kind of start off transitioning into full-fledged acting who are just practically instantaneous prodigies. Dwayne Johnson just took to it so damn quickly. But not everybody necessarily does it. Some people need a little work. Some people need to get some practice in at it. Other than that, I mean, Ryan Reynolds, like I said, woefully underused, and would demonstrate. If this movie has another thing that it accomplishes, it's that it being so bad, I think also motivated everybody to prove that they believed in these characters, and that they could be done better, and to go and do it the right way with someone else. Well, take the whole Wolverine saga itself. After this, Hugh Jackman and James Mangold go forth. They make the Wolverine, which, okay, it wasn't perfect, but it was a damn big improvement in the right direction. And then finally they went and did Logan, and, well, enough bloody said. You had Ryan Reynolds gets to play Wade Wilson. It utterly, absolutely tanks. It falls on its face like it's a new Olympic sport. But then Ryan had so much love for the character that he and Tim Miller went and made a movie so good that they felt obligated to throw in a couple pot shots at the first time around. Failure served as a motivation, and again, you can't hold it entirely against the people who got their parts right. If anything, you should be praising them so much that you say, it's a damn shame you didn't get to do this in a better movie, in a movie that didn't have so many greedy little studio claws in it at the same time. Because keep in mind, this is the same studio that meddled with Daredevil and took what could have been a very good R-rated movie with potential and turned it into a notorious flop that would pretty much shit-can anything further getting done with the movie or with the whole property until Marvel got the rights back. You have to look at the theory, which is now plausible, that, believe it or not, there actually might have been a good Fantastic Four movie that we never got to see because the studio decided they knew what movie they wanted. It was surely what movie the audience wanted, and goddamn, what the hell did we even just watch?
All right, at some point, we're going to have to do the Fantastic Four movies on this show because I don't think they're as bad as everyone's made them out to be.
Yeah, and you know what? To a certain extent, I agree. As we said before on Long Road to Ruin, good cast, pretty good visuals, just horrible story and direction. Or in the case of Fantastic Something or Other, which, you know, I rank just a shade below the attempted Fantastic Four musical in season 4 of Arrested Development. A movie that looked like it actually might have been going someplace right up until Fox decided to remake it. Like how, okay, David Ayer, who did a little bit of scripting on this movie. Who knows if he might have actually had a good Suicide Squad movie in there? We'll never know because Warner Brothers decided they wanted it to be their movie. So, in closing, I don't fault necessarily David Benioff. I don't fault Gavin Hood. I don't fault the better moving parts of the cast. Like I said, namely Huston, Jackman, Schreiber, to a far lesser extent, Reynolds. This is really 20th Century Fox's abomination to own. You know, this rotting corpse needs to be laid at their feet to answer for.
I have to wonder if anyone at Fox to this day knows why people hate this movie. I swear to Christ.
I doubt it.
I guarantee you that if there's an executive at Fox that was involved with this movie and you interviewed him today, it would be kind of like, I don't know if you listen to the Bruce Pritchard podcast, but Bruce has a tendency to go back and talk about stuff that he's written or done and not understand why people hated it. He's like, makes sense to us at the time. You know, and then he does an impression of Jerry Jarrett. Chicken salad, you know. But I just have this feeling that, like, you know, Joe Executive, what do you think went wrong with X-Men Origins: The Wolverine? Fuck if I know. What I thought the kids wanted. He's the guy with the claws, and he sticks them into people, and, you know, chicken salad. All right, so everyone that works at Fox is Jerry Jarrett. Wrestling, by the way, he had on drinking game. Take a drink. Wrestling reference.
Yeah, I am, by the way, an avowed member of the Cult of Cornette. So
I listen to them both.
With the exception of any time he talks about Kevin Owens, that is where Corny and I would have one hell of an interesting conversation if we were to ever meet him, if we were to ever meet in person, because I would have so much evidence to the contrary that I would love to hear him explain away, mostly because I'm pretty sure he would and might even partially convince me. But
well, I'm going to see him the day of WrestleMania, him and Jim Ross. So send me a question, I'll ask it to him, unless I feel like he's going to yell at me, but I might not.
Yeah, I got my opinions about JR too, but we can talk about that sometime when we're off the air. Another one for whom, by God, nothing's ever my fault. Boomer Sooner barbecue sauce.
And I feel like Boomer Schooner barbecue sauce is a great way to end the conversation about Wolverine. So with that said,
you know, but before we do though, one last little tangent. I don't know if you've ever watched the History of the WWE Championship DVD. It's one of mine and my buddy Jeremy's favorites to watch anytime I happen to be in Missouri, because of just two lines he gives that are just absolutely hilarious when he's doing commentary between matches. One was him talking about Shawn Michaels and the WWE Championship, and he just says Shawn Michaels will later recapture the WWE Championship through grit and determination. And it's almost like you can hear the undercurrent of "and nothing else." and another one where he just has a crazy old man Jim moment. Where he just comes up with the most bizarre segue. It's like the pet shop scene in The Room, which I keep forgetting you haven't seen yet. He says Bret Hart was a proud Canadian. I'm from Oklahoma. Proud of that too. Boomer Sooner. Right next to Oklahoma is a little state called Texas. And he then segues into talking about Shawn Michaels. For like, the next minute. I remember the very first time Jeremy and I watched it, I said, "Oh, rewind that back. I want to hear that again."
Like JR's having another stroke.
It's like, and he also has a habit of calling a swanton a moonsault. I remember he did that one time on an episode of Raw, and General like I just said, JR, you have called how many fucking Hardys matches? You know what that move is. You know better. Speaking of weird segues.
All right. So, this is the titular end of Wolverine Week here on the Radulich Broadcast Network. We had a lot of fun this week. We've done themes before. You know, I have a tendency to arm twist my cohorts into picking topics that are similar, so as to create some degree of synergy from week to week. This was the first one where we went out of our way to plan it, pick particular shows around a certain thing. We'll do versions of this in the future. You know, we're doing Iron Fist, The Living Weapon on source material, and then reviewing the show Iron Fist in 2 weeks. Later on in the year, we've got situations where we're going to review The Fate of the Furious. We're going to review an album called Zombie Motor Wrecking Yard, which has the word motor in it, so that fits, right? And then Sean's going to pick something related to cars.
I got a few things in mind.
Okay, good, good. And then following that, we have When in Rome Week. I'm not going to do a big announcement about it, but we're doing all things related to Rome. I think the next time we're actually doing an entire week committed to something, not just a couple of shows hither and thither, is actually Transformers Week. Where we'll probably do another announcement and conversation about it, and then we've got a comic book, we've got a movie, we've got an album, and then on trial we'll do the cartoon Transformers the movie, just because I can't believe either one of us could ever prosecute that thing. So it's fun to stretch people on this show. It's fun to push one or both of us into a very uncomfortable place.
See, the sad part. The sad part is the only time I can think of when I think I've ever seen somebody try to prosecute the animated Transformers. I assume you mean the animated Transformers, right? Just so we're clear.
Yes, the one where Optimus.
Okay.
Spoiler alert: the one where Optimus Prime dies.
Okay. The only time I've ever seen it prosecuted, God, I gotta try to remember. I know Lindsay Ellis, back when she was still doing the Nostalgia Chick, did a send up of it, but it wasn't really all that. It wasn't really all that critical. And well, You know, I feel about Doug Walker about the way Tim Burton feels about Kevin Smith. So, if Dougiekin has ever done it, I damn sure haven't seen it. I just don't know that I've ever seen anybody do a full-fledged critical takedown of it.
Awesome. I can't wait for us to be the first. But so that said, and then at the end of the year, we're doing an entire week dedicated to Star Wars. I'm not going to get into it right this second. It's fucking December. But this was fun, you know, in my opinion, to do it this time around. I hope you enjoyed it. I've certainly pumped it a lot on Facebook. So if you're a new fan of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network and you were brought in by this series of shows, welcome. And as I say, if you've stayed with us this long, I applaud you. That said, next week we've got Dan Hugh Hollywood will be reviewing Kong Skull Island. Oddly enough, currently certified fresh. Who'd have thunk it? And then Sean's pick for the month, we will be doing Zach and Miri Make a Porno. So that'll be fun.
Okay, so wait a sec. So this week, so then it's going to be my turn to prosecute.
I honestly don't have a dog in the hunt, so it's up to you.
Well, I mean, our whole idea was that unless one of us really felt seriously compelled to defend or prosecute something, we would take turns. So, this will be fun because, full disclosure, Kevin Smith is one of my all-time favorite directors, and not in like a Tommy Wiseau giggle with glee at the train wreck way either. His better work is actually really near and dear to my heart. That being said, I picked this one in part because I'm really torn on it. I haven't seen it in years, but I remember when I saw it, it really wasn't my favorite for a number of reasons. So I look forward to looking at it with fresh eyes. And Mark, I don't even remember if you really have much experience with Kev's movies.
I mean, I was into the New Jersey stuff. I've seen Zach and Mary. I actually own it. I think my wife and I, when we first got together, went to a video store that I think was like going out of business, and so we bought a bunch of Blu-rays that were like marked down considerably that they were selling. So like we own like a Blu-ray rental store version of Zach and Miri Make a Porno. So you know that's an easy one for me. I own it. And it's fine. I don't think I was really passionate about it one way or the other. So kind of going, you know, for the ones that I've seen before that we've never had a chance to talk about, one of the things about that's nice about this show is it then forces me to watch something critically that I may have previously watched very passively. And like I said,
it just occurred to me I'm going to be tasked with defending Seth fucking Rogen.
So wait, so I'm prosecuting or I'm defending?
Well, let's see. I prosecuted this time, so I'm defending. Oh God, I have to defend Seth Rogen.
No, you defended X-Men, so I would be defending in this case. If we're just flip-flopping,
but
that's a,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay. I stand corrected. Yippee, I get to eviscerate Seth Rogen.
Okay, so you are prosecuting, I am defending.
All better.
So right now we don't have an on-trial set for the 20th, which will be the next show after this. We'll have a couple of weeks off for various reasons. But we're going to do something car-related. And then 2 weeks after that, you have another pick. So, yeah, you've got 2 picks to give me for the month of April at some point. Actually, 1 pick for the month of April, and then 1 pick, and then 2 back-to-back picks. But one of them is April 20th, and then the next one is May 4th.
I am positive I will come up with something good to give you. Ooh, Monster Garage is on Netflix now. I'm here. I'm caring about things. Just Monster Garage. I like Monster Garage.
Oh, and I'll plug one more thing of yours that we're doing. May 11th, Sean's going to make me watch You're the Hunter from the Future. We did not get a chance to do this. We did not get a chance to do this because of my hospitalization at the beginning of April, beginning of February, sort of screwed up the schedule. So it had to be rebooked for May 9th. And then we'll be doing an on trial for King Arthur 2004. And then, we'll go on from there when we get there because that's May. All right. Go ahead and do your plug, Sean.
Okay. To kind of round things out and, my God, bring this longer than expected show to an end, thank you, everybody, for listening live, for downloading, for liking the Facebook page, offering your feedback, passing our merry little shit show along to friends. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. You are the reason why we do what we do. To that end, please support all our other projects, everything Mark just rattled off. Myself, I'm taking things considerably easy, actually, because I'm, once again, by nomadic nature, I'm going to be moving in the fairly near future. So aside from the occasional rant cast, you can catch me on over at FPG News, over at that same site, that is fpgnews.com. You can also find me April 5th, where I will be tuning in live, providing segment-by-segment, match-by-match coverage of the grand showcase, daddy of them all, WrestleMania 33. If we're giving them subtitles like What the World Has Come To, Where It All Begins Again, I guess this one would be You'll Like What We Fucking Tell You to Like, and you'll like it, goddammit. And that'll be a fun 4 hours. It always is. I pride myself on really detailed, like excruciatingly detailed recaps. So if you can't tune in that night, just tune into our site, keep refreshing the page, and I will have it going on all night long. Otherwise, thank you, Mark, as always, for being an outstanding debate counterpart. I apologize for getting just a little bit snarky there for a little bit. Thank you again to everybody who listened. Thank you to everybody, all my friends and whatnot, who let me bounce jokes and everything off of them. And this is me telling you to be excellent to each other and never dull your colors for someone else's canvas.
All right, everybody, be well, be safe, and behave. All rise. Court is now out of session.